Hi everybody, this is Saya G. Dan, this is Saya Miles. Let's go back to our elbows. Let's work another skill set. This is the feeding elbow. A feeding elbow is different from a jamming elbow in that jamming elbows are intercepting fast, quick, incoming punches, okay, or strikes. A feeding elbow is for when somebody's trying to grapple with you, and you can use your elbow as a leverage point, and you can use your elbow as you feed it to your opponent. Okay. Now we love to say feeding, like I'm going to feed you this elbow. Well, that's not what we mean. Okay. Feeding elbow. I want to show you just a series of quick feeding elbows that will show you concepts of using one elbow, using elbow and a hand, using two elbows at the same time. Remember that one of the reasons I have my hands up here is because I'm hoping I can frustrate him and not let him grab me. So if he gets frustrated, he grabs my wrist. Because if he grabs my wrist, we're still far away. I still have movement. I can still do this. Right? It's really dumb to grab somebody's wrist with their hand up like this. It just doesn't make much sense to do it. Okay? It doesn't make much sense to do it. Right? Whee! All that fun stuff. Now, of course, I froze, so he would have gotten me. I would have lost that exchange. But just to show you that all the things I can do. But let's say that I'm saying, leave me alone, and he grabs my shoulder and he's about to punch me. Right? Because that's what's happening here on this grab. So I'm going to feed both my elbows into him. But how am I going to do that? Well, one of the things I have to do is I have to turn. I have to switch. I have to attack what's given. And I'm going to use my elbows to do it. So as he grabs me and he gets past me, I know this punch is coming. I can't get outside the punch. I cannot get outside the punch. It's not an option. Don't say, well, I would just duck and get outside the punch. No, you wouldn't. He grabbed your shoulder. Until you get him to let go, you are not outside the range of that punch. Sorry, period, the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close. Because I want to be all out, and I can't, I'm going to be all in. So I'm going to feed in both elbows. This elbow is going to feed in an angle across here. And I'm just going to feed it to him. But this elbow is going to feed his elbow. I'm going to feed it right to his arm, and I'm going to wind up matching elbow and shoulder and elbow. So when he grabs me, I'm going to do this. Boom. Okay? Now, slow motion. Feed the elbow into his shoulder. Elbow in here. This is a jamming elbow, right? Just in case he's really punching. But I'm feeding this elbow into his joints as I come in close. The technique I'll employ from here is a real nice knee to the groin because it all happens at once. Feeding elbow, shoulder, feeding elbow, elbow, groin. But that's all broken down slow motion for you. So what I'm going to do is, let's go super slow motion. He grabs me and I'm going to do this. Boom. Okay? My forearm wound up pressing into his throat. Okay? But I'm throwing this elbow, I'm tucking my chin, I'm going down, because this punch is an outside punch here. If he has to come in here to hit me, he's losing power. It's still going to hurt. Okay? Fighting is fast, scary, and painful. Painful? Sorry, you let yourself get grabbed, and now you have to deliver more punishment than you're going to receive, but you're going to receive some. So you've got to make sure it's not a knockout blow to the back of your head. You've got to make sure it's not to your temple or your jaw. And so my head's going to come over here to this side of his body. And I'm going to feed my elbows. So feeding elbow number one is two feeding elbows. It's basically this, but I like this elbow up a little higher to protect against that elbow. That punch, I mean. So when he comes in with that and grabs, I'm going to do this. Boom. Right? So if that punch is faster, and I'm going to go boom. See that? Bring your arm down. Connected. My elbow is feeding into his forearm and his joint. He's going to slide right off of that, but a lot of the power is going to be gone. He's going to hit and slide, but it's going to hurt his forearm, and his punch is going to go higher than my head now. It's going to graze instead of landing here, which is where he was aiming for. All right? Because I'm moving too. I'm not going to stop moving. So when he grabs me, I'm going to feed elbow to elbow, boom in, and then slam in here and follow up with this knee. See this hand? It's hitting me. It's grazing me. Even though I'm all the way over here, it's grazing me. But I'm driving much stronger and more powerful techniques than him. So feeding elbow number one is actually this one. When he grabs me, I feed elbow to elbow. That's the key. Elbow to elbow, hand to shoulder, elbow up here to protect from the secondary punch, and drive it in. And I'm not worried about the punch as much as jamming that punch is great, but I'm slamming and feeding the elbow into his body. So feeding is based off of a grappling concept. So when he grabs me, boom, knee, and just step through and walk him back. So that's a feeding elbow. What if you can't step through? What if you're seated or you're in your walker? You still want to pull in. So if he does that and you get that grab, you want to feed in and pull in. You want to pull in, feed in, grab him, pull him down, and do the other techniques once you get his balance off. Okay? So that's feeding elbow number 1. And you practice it just by having somebody near the side of you grab your shoulder and pull this elbow in. Pull, boom. And you slam and feed the elbows into his body. Feeding in. Helps you make him let go. What if he grabs you with this hand? Another side grip. But that hand, same thing. Now he's punching from behind. Okay? A little dangerous, a little more risky, a little more of a problem. Okay? But the feeding elbow is actually really nice because he's giving me a nice little shelf here. So my feeding elbow is going to turn him. I'm just going to go over, and that's a feeding elbow. And that makes that punch a lot harder, punch me. He can still hit me. Fighting is fast, scary, and painful. But if he's throwing that punch and I'm doing this really hard, right, and I'm pulling in with my lat, that's a feeding elbow. And the feeding elbow, of course, can be boom and boom, right? Most people, when you do that, are going to let go, actually. So if he grabs that and I do this and he goes to do that punch, but then he's going to let go, right? And that's great. We want him to let go. That's the whole point. We want people to let go of us. Okay? So the feeding elbow against the hand that's inside of you is really easy. It's over here. So if you combine the jamming and the feeding together, you're beginning to understand the concept of protective elbows, right? You don't do jamming all by itself. You don't do feeding all by itself. So if he grabs me and throws that punch, I might do this, or I might do this one. Remember this, right? And turn in here. Boom, and then hit and hit. Those are feeding elbows. Okay, so feeding is a grappling situation. This elbow right here, straight up from the Python system. Right? All right. So that one is actually, when somebody grabs us like that, we like to say they made a mistake. He meant to grab me the other way, poor guy. Because this is really easy. Right? And my instructor, did you see that? My instructor used this. So this is the John Collins special. Around and grab. Yeah, and it works. So, so that's a simple, easy feeding elbow. Now, what about the classic martial arts grab, right? The one we all know and love. No, not that one. We just did that one. Let's do the classic double. I'm going to get you. Right? Frankenstein. The Frankenstein, right? The Frankenstein monster. Now, technically, this does happen. This can happen quite a bit if your opponent is bigger and stronger than you and is trying to physically dominate you. What does that mean? It means that in our culture, there's a reality that most people you're going to wind up in a fight with are people you know. There's a reality that a lot of violent encounters are actually domestic abuse. Okay? And domestically speaking, or personally speaking, or working with someone who knows you, this person might have themselves believing that you are the one being irrational, and they're grabbing to calm you down or shake some sense into you. Well, that makes them a grade A1 something, but it does happen. The choke does happen. The lapel grab does happen. It's not very common. But feeding elbows for this is very, very fun because you're actually going to feed up on the inside. And what you're going to do is brace out his elbows and feed your elbows right to him. Okay? So you're going to come in here and you're going to punch your elbows in, right? At the same time. It's not right grab, elbow, elbow, right? That's not what happens. As he grabs you, or she grabs you, okay, too late, I needed to move right away, all right? A feeding elbow has to happen right away. As he grabs you, that works, because he hasn't locked out and gone muscle with you yet. So as he's grabbing, you're going inside the grab and feeding him the elbows. And the elbows slam into here, okay? And then there's always a question of what do we do after? Well, this is a feeding elbow exercise. This is in self-defense class. Go to the GMC and study all this, and you'll see it. But this feeding elbow, as we come in and feed, leads to grabbing, it leads to eyes, leads to, because I just need to get to him. If this person wants to grab me, they think they can control a grabbing encounter. My job is to show them they can't. Feeding elbows give me movement. They give me advantages. So this feeding elbow, number 3, is punching out and in with your elbows. Driving with your elbows is the key. Because if I think about it doing with my hands, right? Now we're doing this. And the whole point is, if somebody's doing this to me, they're probably bigger and stronger than me. Okay? They probably think they can dominate me. They're trying to grab me and dominate me. So if we get into a muscle match, he grabs me and I grab him, I'm losing. Because he's probably right. He can probably dominate me physically. So I don't want to be out here smaller, holding on with longer arms starting to punch me or going up and becoming a choke or grabbing my hair and pulling me. What I want to do is let go. As soon as somebody grabs me and I'm like this and they come in and and punch in, right? And as it goes to grab me and I go just straight in right away. The second those hands come at me, punch your elbows to his elbows and slide them into his chest. Because if you can get close enough, you can deliver the techniques you need. So that's what a feeding elbow is. Let's go over the 3 feeding elbows again. Grab me with this hand. Okay, so if he grabs me with this hand, I'm going to go here and here. Feed both elbows. Okay? You can practice as you get better with the punches. But in the beginning, don't. Number 2, he grabs me with this hand. Just around and pull, right? I drop my weight. You see how I drop my weight? See how I'm looking at what I'm doing? See how my elbow is crunching down in here and pulling him down? It's very simple, right? And then, of course, my instructor's grab. That's number 2. And number 3 is the double. Immediately punch into the elbows and feed your elbows into his chest. Because that puts me right here, protecting me. No karate chops, please. Just grab, or eyes, or ears, or lip, or nose, right? Vital targets. Okay, so that's the feeding elbow drill I like to practice. Then do it on the other side. And just practice them slow and easy. Practice them slow and easy till you get them right. Practice them seated. Practice them with your walker. Practice them standing, trying to use just your balance. Using your weight to drive those techniques.